The previous basket is under review.
Welcome in to another episode of Weekend Under Review. That is Matthew Winick. I am Brian Rauf, here to talk about a crazy week of college basketball and look ahead to another crazy weekend, or at least a crazy Saturday. You said before we got on here, the split, there's 140 something games on Saturday and like 15 on Friday and Sunday.
Yep, combined 15. It's insane. Just if you want to watch college basketball, probably be Saturday because there's something all day long.
Saturday is the day. Saturday is the day for sure. And Saturday should be the day that you also subscribe to Basket Under Review, if you have not already. Subscribing to Basket Under Review gets you access to all of our paywalled content at basketunderreview.com and access to the Discord, which has all of Trillian Donovan's intel, the best collection of college basketball sickos that are out there. Make sure you subscribe and get access to both of those things today. All right, Matthew, we're going to start with the biggest story in the sport, quite honestly. It's the fact that there are two fewer unbeatens than there were when we talked last. Iowa State and Vanderbilt both fall at Kansas, at Texas, respectively. We'll dive into each of those matchups, but Iowa State and Vanderbilt perspective here, obviously no longer unbeaten, suffered their first loss. Which one of those losses concerns you more? So Iowa State's loss or was it Vanderbilt's loss?
It's Vanderbilt's loss. Losing at Kansas is less of an egregious loss than losing at Texas. Just as a general program situation, like losing at Kansas happens. You can't take that too seriously. With Vanderbilt, it was the interior, and this was their huge problem last year. They were one of the smallest teams in Power Conference basketball. When they got to SEC play, they struggled with physicality. They struggled with rebounding. They struggled on the interior. Texas, for their flaws, is one of the bigger, stronger teams in the SEC. They dominated the paint. They dominated the free throw line, and they dominated the rebounding battle 42-24. When you get killed on the boards and you get killed on the interior, you got to really shoot the ball well or get a ton of steals. And unfortunately, Vanderbilt did not do either. Jalen Washington, who's really their only true big, fouled out in 15 minutes. And then you got to go smaller than that. And Vandy's been fouling a ton. They're not big outside of Washington, who's a big net negative in lineups that he plays when he isn't in foul trouble. And I suppose we could have seen coming a team whose only true size is someone who was really, a flawed member of a flawed Tar Heels North Carolina team last year. Yeah, maybe there's a world where we could have seen this coming.
Yeah, I think that has been the one lingering question with Vanderbilt. As we mentioned, they continue to answer everything that's kind of thrown at them. But what is the ceiling without a true interior presence or having a lackluster presence on the interior? Obviously, they have enough guys that make up for it in the style of play they want to play, fast, up-tempo, perimeter-oriented, works incredibly well for them. But as is the case with most perimeter-oriented teams that don't have size, this is something that can happen. I do think that Texas may have been, in terms of the teams that Vanderbilt has played, uniquely equipped to exploit that in a way that other Vanderbilt teams that Vanderbilt had played had not. Go down the list of who Vanderbilt has played. Like the biggest team that they've played is probably St. Mary's, and St. Mary's doesn't have the athleticism on the perimeter to also then handle what Vanderbilt wants to do on the perimeter. Texas had that, so they were able to make Vanderbilt play Texas's style and play the way Texas wanted to play, and Vanderbilt had no answer for that, quite frankly. You mentioned the advantage on the boards. Texas also outscored them 30-14 in the paint, too. Like, it was just total domination on the interior there. I'm not concerned about Iowa State in the slightest from this game. I mean, maybe if things happen the next 2 or 3 games, there's a pattern that we start recognizing. They just didn't shoot it well, and Kansas did. It was at Allen Fieldhouse. Trey White was phenomenal. Iowa State turned it over more than they had assists. Typically, they're doing that to the opposition. Kansas handled any Iowa State pressure beautifully in this game. So it just felt like one of those games. Teams aren't going to be perfect in basketball.
If there is a concern with Iowa State, it's if Milan Momcilovic is not making shots, do they have another shot maker? Like Jamarian Bateman's more of a floor spacer. Taman Lipsey and Josh Jefferson are more, play finishers, play setters. do they have another shot maker? Because Momcilovic was not good in that game. Obviously, he
No.
was not the reason they lost, but he's been so unbelievable this year. Like, if he does drop production by like 20-30%, how bad does that make Iowa State's offense?
Yeah, his like true shooting percentage or effective field goal percentage was like 71 point something.
Number 2 in the country.
Yeah, numbers you see from big men who only dunk the ball. Like he has been just absurdly efficient this season. But Joshua Jefferson didn't play that well either. 5 turnovers, 1 assist. He didn't shoot the ball well. Lipsy didn't shoot the ball well. You didn't get your typical contributions off the bench that you may get. I'm chalking this up as they played a good Kansas team in a difficult environment, and they did not play well. Well, again, we'll see if stuff continues for Iowa State. Then that's another conversation. I'm willing to chalk this up as just a blip because, again, this is a college basketball team. They're not going to be perfect.
Well, Iowa State does not play a top 40 Ken Pom team for the next 30 days. So they have some time to get it right, but they also have some time for some bad losses.
The next game is at Cincinnati, which if you want to be able to win a game without your offense being clicking on all cylinders, that might be. Is that this is the paper bag game, right? Where Cincinnati on social media, some of the fan base is talking about everybody wearing paper bags over their heads to the game.
They just won. They just won a game. They just beat Colorado.
Well, I would hope they would beat Colorado.
They won. You don't put your paper bag on your head after a win.
Just goes to show you, I think, where that fan base is right now with this team and coaching staff. Let's get to some other big games that happened. We had talked about the UConn Seton Hall game in our last episode, and that potentially being a really fun one. Proved to be that. UConn had a massive lead, saw it really dwindle. Ultimately, they held on and got the 69-64 victory. I feel a bit more uneasy about UConn after this game, simply because Seton Hall got back in this game the same way BYU got back in their game against UConn when they played back in November. Get down big, start pressuring UConn, and UConn had no answers for that. Looked really uncomfortable against Seton Hall's pressure. What did you make of that from the Huskies?
Seton Hall took 9 more shots than UConn in this game. The free throws were identical. Seton Hall did a better job of getting second opportunities. That's something UConn normally does a very good job of. But they got out rebounded and lost the turnover battle in this game. That's just Seton Hall. They made 1 3. You're not going to win games when you make 1 3. If Seton Hall made 3 threes, then UConn loses this basketball game. At the same time, and I mentioned this going into this game, like this might be the most that UConn gets tested, that game at Seton Hall, until March Madness. So you kind of have to put those issues on the back burner. Like, yeah, they struggle under pressure. They turned it over a ton. They blew a big lead. And their offense is definitely not performing at peak capacity in Big East play. How do they rectify that when you're playing, Georgetown, Villanova, Providence, Creighton, and Xavier in your next 5 games? It's one of those things that, Dan Hurley's the type of coach that it should be okay, but you've got to stay focused and figure out these things and take away negatives in wins, because there were certainly negatives despite winning this game.
Yeah, on one hand, you got up 18 on the road pretty convincingly, and so we know UConn still has that in the bag, right? I think the biggest thing we'll see is against these kind of teams and opponents that want to pressure UConn is a lot more Malachi Smith. He played 8 minutes in this game. Solo ball was on the court for a lot of that comeback from Seton Hall. He had 5 turnovers in this one. As good as solo ball is, and I'm a big solo ball guy, he's not somebody. He is a 2 guard. He's not a point. He is an off-ball guard, and we've seen this a couple of times where he has struggled handling some pressure. Demery wasn't perfect, but made enough plays down the stretch. The block from Braylon Mullins, he continues to show himself and show some toughness more and more as he's been healthy and gotten more and more rhythm this UConn team. He played a team-high 35 minutes in this game, the freshman. I think it says a lot that Dan Hurley and that coaching staff is trusting him this much, this quickly, and the impact he's able to have on both ends of the floor when he was noted as just being a shooter. A really good one, but just being a shooter coming into school.
Is solo ball UConn's 5th best player?
Right now, I think so. Right now, I think so. I don't know if it'll stay that way, but the way he's playing right now, his shot's not falling, and Braylon Mullins has stepped up and kind of taken over that role as their primary like shooting option. But I also think that speaks to how scary this UConn team can be, because Solo Ball is too good to go. What is this? 3 of 13 from three as he's on his last 3 games consistently. Like he's going to get back on track when that happens. I think this UConn team can get to a different level.
He's shooting 30% in Big East play from 3. That's higher than his season average. And he has 9 turnovers to 4 assists in his last 3 games.
Water's going to find its level at some point. I think he's much closer to the 41.4% he shot last year than the 28.8% he's shooting this year.
If so, then that's a scary thought for Big East opponents. If not, they don't really have another guy like him outside of Mullins because, you can go 2 guard look with Silas Demery and Malachi Smith, but neither of them are early spacers. Mm-hmm. So probably for the best version of UConn, you're going to probably need that 42% solo ball for them to get there.
Yeah, I think that's something to watch with a UConn team that, kind of as you mentioned, probably won't be tested a ton in the win-loss column in Big East play. Not that they're not going to face tests, but they should have a number of games they win handily. I think the bigger thing to watch with UConn is, at least right now, can they get solo ball going again? And what does that look like if they can round into form when they need to come March? The game of the night on Wednesday night, and there were a lot of good games Wednesday night, a lot of buzzer beaters Wednesday night too, a lot of fun. But was Purdue's 79-72 victory over Iowa. There was a really good stretch, particularly the first half, where it looked like Iowa was going to get the biggest and best win of the Ben McCollum era so far. Purdue and Braden Smith said enough of that. Had a huge second half, so they came back to win the game. What do you make of Purdue's comeback effort and the way they were able to control things in that second half?
I mean, when you can win a basketball game when Cale Combs, Tavion Banks, and Tate Sage go, 9 of 12 from 3, and you win that pretty handily by 7 points, not really in question over the last few minutes, like you were the better team in that game. Let's just say that's what the box score would represent. I mentioned in the last episode that I wanted to see Braden Smith more assertive. And he was invisible in the first half. I don't know if he was feeling the game out. He was making like bad reads, like not Braden Smith reads. Maybe Ben McCollum did a good job of kind of getting to him and throwing some curveballs at him in the first half. But he was unbelievable in the second half of this basketball game. He was getting to his spots. He was looking for his shot on drives, which he wasn't doing enough in the first half. And he looked like a first-team All-American when it mattered the most. And once he turned it on to his upper level, Iowa had no chance. So this is really what it comes down to for Purdue. They have enough shooters around him. They're going to win the rebounding battle because Clough and TKR are unbelievable on the boards, even if TKR's effort level was lacking in spots and he wasn't foul trouble in the first half. But when Braden Smith is a top 5 player in the sport, like he was for the final 20 minutes in this game, at home, Purdue is not losing.
No. All 16 points he scored in the second half. This is something that I've written about at basketballreview.com. This is something that you and I have talked about on past episodes. Iowa's defense against the better teams that they've played has not been good. The offense has been okay and pretty much at a solid level, no matter the competition. The defense, the splits are jarring between when they play like quad 1, quad 2 games versus quad 3, quad 4, the lesser competition that they face. They needed to get a stop in the second half, and they could not do it. They just couldn't do it. Purdue was 16 of 22 from the field in the second half, missed one shot in the final 10 minutes, 1.5 points per possession in the second half of that game.
It's good.
It's really good. Like if Iowa just gets 2 more stops, the game is probably different, and they couldn't do it. Now, as you mentioned, they had so much stuff go right for them offensively when you had guys contributing at levels they normally don't. That lends itself to an upset of this caliber, which would be a huge one over Purdue. But the inability to get stops for this team, it continues to limit their ceiling, and I think is going to continue to limit their ceiling until they improve on that end, because right now that's really, really holding them back.
There was also a couple minutes in the first half where Bennett Sturch sat with 2 fouls, and that didn't go well. He's the most important player to his team in the country, and unfortunately, you'd think that's a really good thing. At a certain point, that is not a good thing, because to have the most indispensable player in the country means that sometimes he has to be dispensed, and then what? And that's what happened for a couple of minutes. Then he kind of played a little timid the rest of the first half because he couldn't pick up that third.
Supporting cast isn't good enough around him for Big Ten level competition. I don't think the supporting cast around him is good enough. Certainly.
Well, they whiffed on Brendan Housen in the portal, who was supposed to be a starter.
Yep.
For whatever reason, it has not really been discussed. Part of it's defensive. Part of it is he's not a secondary ball handler, but he doesn't play. And Alvaro Fulgaris, who you were low on coming into the year, played 14 minutes. Isn't physical enough to play in the Big Ten right now. So they're really depending on like freshmen. Cooper Koch is the only holdover, and then the Drake guys. And you can't be a 500 Big Ten team with last year's Drake team, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately. What else did you see this week? Because as I mentioned, there was a lot of buzzer beaters. This was like a truly fun college basketball week of games, peak college basketball. Where do you want to take us?
The best game that I watched this week was Stanford, North Carolina. It was really so much fun. Abuka, Corey, and Caleb Wilson basically turning it into their own skills challenge, just going back and forth with a move that made me lose my mind. I've talked about Corey multiple times on this show. He is my favorite freshman in the country. He's unbelievable. I don't know what happens to him after this year. Academically, like if he's not at Stanford, he's probably at Duke, just because academics are a huge part of the deal for him. But also he might be at the NBA. Who knows? Remember, he was originally committed to Harvard, so really who knows at this point. But he is better than basically any freshman that I've ever seen at Stanford. And they've had some 5-stars. Stojakovic, Harrison Ingram, a couple of guys come through there. Caleb Wilson has gotten way better, and I don't think we've talked about that enough. He's gotten way better at finishing around the rim. It had been a problem for him early in his freshman season, but he's now at 69% inside the arc in ACC play, which you'd think would go down with all those bye games gone. He's been unbelievable. But UNC's defense completely broke down the stretch. They left Stanford's Jeremy Dent-Smith open like 4 times down the stretch. He finished 6 of 7 from deep. For a North Carolina team that's great at taking away the 3 ball, they allowed 50% of Stanford's shots from deep. Stanford hit 57% of them. You're going to win every home game when you shoot 57% from 3 on 50% rate. North Carolina's defense has to be better if they want to seriously compete in both the ACC and the NCAA tournament. But hats off to Stanford for getting it done.
This is my lead in to the Rauf report that's up on basketballreview.com. Growing up in the Triangle, the Raleigh area, a lot of my friends went to college at North Carolina or grew up North Carolina basketball fans, obviously. So there is a group chat we have, and that is largely North Carolina fans. And seeing all of them realize how good a Corey is in real time last night or Wednesday night was a lot of fun, because it went from like, hey, I think Stanford has this really good guy, to the end of the game going, oh my god, this dude is insane. Like, just seeing that in real time was a lot of fun and quite comical. He was phenomenal. He's the first freshman in the country with 36 points and 9 assists in a game since Trae Young.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Is Vanderbilt's a good academic school, right?
Vanderbilt is a good academic school.
Maybe he'll go there. He's not going to go to state school. He's going to have to go to, if he's transferring, maybe he stays at Stanford. That'd be cool. But if he's transferring, he's going to go somewhere with good academics. So Duke, Vanderbilt, we'll see. I
had this thought, and I'm bringing this up off. I have not prepped you for this at all, so I apologize. But there's the talk of, Tyler Tanner and Corey both being like potential one and dones who nobody, or potential NBA draft picks who nobody had on the radar before the season started. Who would you take first in an NBA draft? Because I would take a Corey 10 times out of 10.
I'd take Tanner just because of the way that they play. Tanner's a better off-ball shooter. Tanner has longer arms. They're both very small, but Tanner plays bigger. Tanner's a better defender. Corey's flashier. He's probably a better downhill scorer, but you're not drafting these guys to be Trey as good as the Trae Young stat line was. Like they're not Trae Young like primary ball handler in the NBA good and Tyler Tanner. Like this is not an NBA draft podcast, but I think
No.
Tanner makes more sense in the NBA. I wouldn't even be surprised if Tanner leaves and Okori stays. Actually,
nothing would surprise me with them in the academic part of Okori's career. I think does matter a lot. The only thing, these are two awesome players. I'm not trying to take anything away from them. The only thing with Tanner is he is small. Like he looks small. Okori, while being small, I think has more of the strength needed to make up for that at the next level. At least right now in their development. But I think that's an interesting comparison when it gets to NBA draft time between those two because of some of the limitations and the lack of expectations coming into the season.
Did you hear on the broadcast who Ibuka Okori's high school prep school backcourt mate was last year?
I missed it.
Iowa State's Killian Toure. It was Ibuka Okori and Killian Toure in the backcourt of a high school team. That was probably a very good high school team.
How did people like underrate both of them?
I guess they didn't want to go to New England. Brewster Academy is in New Hampshire, I believe. Yeah. Okori, a lot of it was like his parents made him go to Harvard. So he convinced him to decommit, and obviously Stanford is like close enough academically. They let him. That probably hampered his recruitment a bit because he committed to Harvard early. Toure, maybe the international. I don't know. Maybe go back to Brewster Academy for guards because 2-4-2.
We just went from Cooper Flagg hailing from Maine to these two guys hailing from New Hampshire. Maybe we need to pay more attention to New England high school hoops.
How come Boston College and UMass can't get these guys? What are we doing here?
Boston College needs to worry about getting fans into the arena before they worry about anything else. I got two major things. I think the main one, I think I'm out on this Tennessee team, quite frankly. They managed to beat Texas A&M in double overtime. That was a game that the finish was, people are talking about, like, oh, that was a great game. That was a close finish. It was not a great game. It was not a great game. Tennessee won that game because A&M's got a little bit of the Vanderbilt thing going on where there's just no interior presence for them on the inside. I think Tennessee won the rebounding battle by like 24 in that game. That was the only reason why they won that game. The reason it went in overtime was because they got 2 offensive rebounds off of free throws in the final couple of seconds. The margins for this Tennessee team are so much smaller than normal. We're running out of time for Nate Ament to figure it out and become an efficient offensive player.
He was good.
We're running out of time.
He's good in that game. He was good in that game.
He was not as good as Tennessee needs him to be, particularly when Gillespie is not as efficient as Gillespie has been, and the rest of the roster around them has not been supporting them the way they need to. Tennessee is still a good team. I think they're going to be okay, but this is a team where Rick Barnes has them now, a program that expects to be a second weekend team at minimum. This team's not that. I don't think this team is that, unless some things turn around here drastically, but I don't see that really happening with this group, quite frankly.
Yeah, fair.
The other part, Cam Boozer is kind of killing what would be a really awesome ACC Player of the Year race because of how good Cam Boozer is. But if he had a Corey, Boopy Miller is hitting half-court shots to win games for SMU in the ACC. Obviously, Caleb Wilson, you got a number of guys in the ACC who could make this a really, really fun Player of the Year race and should make for a really fun, like, who's on the first team all ACC. Cam Boozer is squashing what would have been one of the more fun Player of the Year races in the country with just how good he is. Part of what I do with the Rauf Report is, look up like, this guy is really good, and I try and put that in context with only this guy and this guy can kind of match his analytical profile this season. Cam Boozer's in all of them. Cam Boozer is in all of them, no matter what it is. Filter, for point guard type stuff, big man type stuff. Cam Boozer is in all of them, and I think that overshadows how good a lot of these other guys in the ACC have been. So I do want to take a second to point out, like, non-traditional ACC schools too, but Corey and Boopy Miller. That would have been really fun if Boozer was not at Duke.
Yeah, the if you add the defensive stats plus the rebounding plus the passing plus the efficiency, there is no player in college basketball history that has done what Cameron Boozer is doing.
No.
The only person that comes close statistically is if you take out the 3-pointers, you'll get Ben Simmons. But of course, Cam Boozer's hit 24 threes on 36%. So like you have to add those threes because that was an element of Ben Simmons' game he did not have. Like no one has ever done what Cam Boozer is currently doing.
No, like Okori is doing things that only some of the best college players we've ever seen in our lifetimes have done. Boopy Miller is putting up like Kemba Walker type analytical profile type stats with his usage and how productive and efficient he has been. And neither of them have a chance to win their conference player of the year.
No chance.
No chance. Just absurd. Just absurd. Let's look to the week ahead, or the weekend ahead, excuse me. Particularly Saturday. We mentioned most of the games are on Saturday. These 4 games we're going to talk about are all on Saturday. We're going to get started at 2 o'clock on ESPN when Florida goes and faces Vanderbilt in Nashville. Vanderbilt team that's looking to get back on track after their first loss. This Florida team is looking much better the last week or two. What are your biggest things you're looking for from this game that will determine who wins?
Florida's shooting 27.9% from 3. I say this because the craziest thing about that stat, you'd think that it's been getting better. It's worse in SEC play. They're at 26.9%. They're 1% worse in SEC play when it feels like things are quote unquote getting better and they're playing tougher competition and they're beating said competition. Like it's been established at this point, Florida cannot shoot. That is not going to change. They're not going to get to 30% this year. It'd be very, very surprising with all their season's half over. They're not going to get to 30%. They are one of, if not the best rebounding teams I've ever seen. To be top 3 in offensive and defensive rebounding is basically impossible, and they're doing it, and they're winning games solely off of that. Now, if only they were playing a team who just lost the rebounding battle by 18 in a 16-point loss, whose only big man fouled out in 15 minutes, and everyone else in the roster that plays meaningful minutes is 6'7" or below. Oh, wait. They are. That seems like a bit of a problem. Of course, Vanderbilt can win the turnover battle. Vanderbilt will win the 3-point battle. But how valuable is rebounding? If you can get 20 more rebounds than your opponent and you are bigger on the inside and can finish over them, does anything else even matter?
This is going to be the biggest test of how vulnerable Vanderbilt will or will not be come tournament time based on draw. Because for everything Florida is not in the backcourt, they are in the front court. You can make an argument whether this is the best front court in the country or not, but they are in the conversation, certainly. And they are the best rebounding team in the country. Going and playing on the road is always difficult. Like this is the same Florida team that went and lost at Missouri, and Vanderbilt is much better than Missouri. But they have a huge advantage and a huge strength where Vanderbilt is the weakest. And we just saw Vanderbilt get exploited there by a Texas team that is much worse than Florida, and a front court was able to exploit Vanderbilt. And that front court for Texas is much worse than the front court for Florida. Minor storyline I'm keeping an eye on for the long-term health of Florida beyond this game. Since Boogie Flan got his haircut, he's been good. He's been good.
Yeah, it's true.
It's not because of the haircut. I want to make that clear. It's not because of the haircut.
It could be.
But could be.
Alfred Payton couldn't see before he got a haircut. Then he learned how to shoot after.
Jameis Winston couldn't see before LASIK, and that did nothing to stop his YOLO balling. So who knows? Who knows? He did signify the fresh start. They talked about after the Tennessee game, but he was awesome at the Tennessee game. 23 points, the most he had scored in a Florida uniform. Then he goes and plays Oklahoma, scores 15 points, along with 7 assists and 5 boards. That's all Florida needs from him. Like Florida, when Boogie Flan scores double figures, everything is astronomically better than if he scores single digits. Just having that threat on the perimeter, again, doesn't have to be carrying them, but you get something. We've been begging for Florida to just get something from the perimeter to complement that front court. If Boogie Flan is able to provide them something, just what he's done the last 2 games, even if it's a little bit less than what he's done the last 2 games, this Florida team, again, projecting forward, is a team that can compete with the best teams in the SEC. That can be one of those teams that can make a run in March that far exceeds the seed. Something to monitor there, but the biggest thing for sure, front court. How does Vanderbilt handle Florida's front court, and can they do enough elsewhere to make up for that big disadvantage that favors the Gators?
It's also one thing to get guarded by Nigel Pack, and it's another thing to get guarded by Tyler Tanner.
It is, but he did it against Tennessee. Then again, I am out on Tennessee. Tennessee stinks. So who can say?
Okay.
Let's shift to Saturday night because there are a lot of good games Saturday night in particular. Biggest one's probably going to be BYU at Texas Tech. Big 12 title implications here. What's going to determine this one? What are the major underlying storylines, underlying aspects of this that you're watching?
Is there a single top 25 team, top 25 versus top 25, which just is with Texas Tech and BYU? I don't know if there's a worse matchup than Texas Tech's defense against AJ DeBonsa. Like, who guards AJ DeBonsa on Texas Tech? Because they are tiny. Like, Lawan Watts is the only person that has an even close to similar physical profile to DeBonsa. Lawan Watts fouls too much, and he can't get into foul trouble here because Texas Tech has absolutely zero depth. And when they don't have Lawan Watts at the 4, they're playing Leon Horner or Nolan Groves, and that's really not going to fly and work against a team as good as BYU. AJ DeBonsa is 10th in the entire country in drawing fouls. He draws 7.7 fouls per 40 minutes. He basically fouls you out a time and a half per game when you're guarding him. Texas Tech doesn't double anything. I don't know what they're going to do here. It's one thing with Cameron Boozer, who's just a straight downhill driver. You have to guard AJ DeBonsa everywhere, and he's going to blow by you if you play him all the way up at the three-point line. He's going to post you up if you play a guard on him. I don't know what they're going to do. So between Keba Keita crashing the glass against JT Toppin, who can't box out too aggressively, BYU's too physical and too aggressive against a Texas Tech team that has zero depth still. Mm-hmm. It just feels like a really bad matchup.
I don't want to hear any more debate about who the number 1 pick in the draft is.
Yeah, it's DeBonsa.
It's DeBonsa. DeBonsa keeps doing insane things over and over and over again. He is Cam Boozer's size with Darren Peterson's skill.
Not from 3,
but everywhere else, and perhaps even better inside the arc. He is. You want to know what it's like to drop like a pro in college, and like you have this conversation all the time. How far could this pro carry this team? That's what BYU is with DeBonsa. We just dropped this pro in, a good team around him, obviously, and we're like, all right, let's see what happens here. Being at Texas Tech, being in Lubbock, is going to matter a lot in this game, I think, because the role players and the quote unquote others always tend to perform better at home, tend to shoot better at home, familiar atmosphere, familiar sight lines, everything like that. But the recipe for Texas Tech is kind of the same recipe that it was when they beat Duke, which is just Christian Anderson and JT Toppin being awesome.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to boil down to, honestly. Christian Anderson has to abuse Rob Wright and make it so that they have to put somebody else on him. And Toppin, he can get Keita in foul trouble. He can shoot over Keita, certainly. That happens. Like, we get 50 combined points from the two of them. Texas Tech has a real chance to win, and win kind of comfortably in this too. This is another time too. We've talked about BYU's sometimes slow starts that they have in games before turning it on in the second half. You start slow in Lubbock with as on fire as this Red Raiders team is going to be, and as on fire as the atmosphere of that arena is going to be, you could get run off the court before you even have a chance to turn it back on. Like, BYU's got to come out strong in this game to avoid potential disaster there.
Yeah, I mean, BYU did come back from 20-point deficits against UConn, against Clemson. Obviously, they didn't win the UConn game. They won the Clemson game. Coincidentally, the only 2 times they played Ken Pom top 25 teams this year.
Yeah.
Top 30 because Clemson's 28th. Maybe if they don't fall behind by 20, they'll win this one. I would suggest not falling behind by 20 this time. Guard the 3-point line. I think you're fine. If JT Toppin scores 40 against you, quite honestly, I don't actually think that's a huge issue because Toppin's not a good passer and he can't shoot. So, like, if you're living and dying with JT Toppin hook shots, I actually think that's a good equation. And I think that's what BYU is going to do here. They don't really pressure the ball a ton. They don't really double. So they're going to let Toppin bang down low against, they now have a 6'10" former pro, Abdullah Ahmed, who just signed up for their team a couple of weeks ago and has been unbelievable as a rim protector. So BYU has no shortage of size down low. Let Toppin beat you. That's the way to win this one.
Yeah, it's the strategy UConn used against Zach Edey, right? Where we're going to take everybody else away. Edey can get his. That's fine. Of course, I don't know if BYU has a Donovan Clingan type on the interior to help kind of mitigate that, but we could see some of that. It'll be interesting to see from a strategical standpoint how Kevin Young and that BYU staff approach it. Let's shift over to the Mountain West now, because there is a really big game in the Mountain West, 8:00. Also, same times that BYU Texas Tech game. Have CBS Sports Network up as well to watch this one between New Mexico and San Diego State. New Mexico started 3-2 this season. They're now 14-3, 5-1 Mountain West play. San Diego State 6-0 has shown some vulnerabilities, but two of the top three teams in the Mountain West, a game that is probably going to mean a lot when it comes to the Mountain West regular season race and who ends up winning this. The game is being played at San Diego State, so that is a big advantage for the Aztecs there. What should we be watching for in this one?
Yeah, these are the two best teams in the Mountain West, outside of Utah State.
Outside of Utah State.
State's number one. Utah State's number one. Then it's these two. But if you told me at the end of the year that one of them was ahead of Utah State, I'd believe you. San Diego State, I think we overreacted to when they really struggled at Players Era. For one, they got absolutely blown out by Michigan before we knew Michigan was this good. So that hurt their public perception. They got destroyed by Arizona, but so they got destroyed by the top two teams in the country, like bravo. Outside of that, rough game against Troy. Baylor shot the lights out against them. That's it. They've won every other game. They have the number one defense in the Mountain West by effective field goal percentage this season. They really struggled defensively for a long time. Look now, they're 27th in KenPom. Like, they're almost where they were last year. They're a really good basketball team. And if you think that they're not as good as last year, I think they're at a point where it's possible that, they're higher in KenPom than last year. So any perception that you've been hearing or any narrative where it's like San Diego State's not the same, like something's wrong, they're disappointing. They're only disappointing if you overhype them in the preseason. Don't listen to the overhype. They're a very good basketball team. New Mexico, under Eric Olin, who's one of my favorite coaches in the country, I think he does a tremendous job. They're all scheme. They are not anywhere close to as talented on paper as San Diego State, but they trap everything. They make you very confused offensively. They do not let you get into a comfortable rhythm, and they don't lose at home. Of course, this is at San Diego State, so that does not have the same level of advantage. So this should really be an excellent game.
I don't think San Diego State's the same. I think it's okay to be disappointed in the San Diego State team. This game, though, I do think is going to go a long way in determining what the rest of the season looks like for them. Because as we've talked about them not living up to preseason expectations, we have acknowledged that they are still good enough to win the Mountain West.
Yeah.
This game, I think, is going to determine that. Because while they've lost to the best teams on their schedule, and no one's going to knock you for losing to Michigan the way you did, because Michigan is Michigan. No one's going to knock you for losing Arizona, certainly. The performances against the other good teams they have played has not been great. It hasn't been. There's the Boise State win, which took 3 overtimes, and you probably should have lost the game despite leading by 24 at one point in that game. You beat Nevada by 5 on the road. Wasn't necessarily a great performance. You're 6-0 in Mountain West. 4 of those wins are Air Force, San Jose State, Fresno, and Wyoming, all of whom are outside the KenPom top 100. Like those are bottom half of the Mountain West teams. So I'm not here to say San Diego State is done, cooked, should not be expected to win this game. But I do think we need a little bit more context to how good San Diego State actually is. And I think New Mexico is a good barometer for that, because San Diego State at home with the talent advantage should beat a team like New Mexico and should win fairly okay, right? But New Mexico is also good enough, particularly the way they're playing and the way they are defensively and how bad San Diego State has been offensively against top 100 opponents. They can go on the road and win this game and it not be a fluke. Like, I'm into this. I think this game is going to tell us more about both of these teams more than any other game in the country this weekend. This is one where it's a lot of like, all right, well, who are you truly for both of these teams that at least I still have some significant questions about.
Yeah, I just disagree. I think that San Diego State's exactly who they were last year. They've gone through a lot of different rotations. They're figuring it out. I think they've figured it out, and I think that you're going to see typical San Diego State dominance in this game, and for most of the rest of the Mountain West season, they play Utah State twice. They will not lose both. It will not happen.
I think maybe that goes into expectations because San Diego State was not supposed to be what they were last year, right? They're supposed to be better. And if they are what they were last year, I think San Diego State fans would tell you that's a disappointment.
Well, it's not a team's fault for not living up to expectations. It's up to a team to do what they've done, face in front of them. Like, obviously the Troy loss sucks, but other than that, they haven't done anything that has been like, oh, what a huge disappointment. They've lost to teams that are better than them, and they're beating teams that are worse than them. Outside of one outlier, teams have one outlier all the time. Like, they've only able to do what's put in front of them, and for the most part, they have done what they've had to do. Like, if that's not good enough, then I don't know what to tell you.
That's why I think this game is important, because I think they should be better than Baylor. You have the loss again. You can good shooting performance from Baylor in that game. You can we chalk that up all the time. We just talked about Iowa State. You can chalk that up, right? But I do think you lose at home to New Mexico, then you start being like, the Boise State game was a little weird. The Nevada game, they didn't quite play well. They do have the loss against Baylor, and you start looking at things a little bit differently. I think this is a great game to contextualize the seasons, at least to this point, both in Mexico and San Diego State, what we should expect moving forward. The other big West Coast game, mid-major, non-power conference West Coast game, St. Mary's at Santa Clara. The Santa Clara team is interesting and fun. I think the upside is there. The consistency with them has not been. Speaking of just kind of one-off blips, they did lose to Loyola Chicago. So that is on Santa Clara's resume. Meanwhile, St. Mary's just continues to be a beacon of consistency, other than the Vanderbilt loss, which, hey, Vanderbilt's really freaking good. They've just handled their business along the way. 1 point loss to Boise State aside. What are you looking forward to in this one?
In the last 8 meetings between Santa Clara and St. Mary's, they've been within 90 KenPom spots in every matchup. St. Mary's has been better every time, but within 90 spots. Do you know what St. Mary's record is in those 8 games?
8-0.
8-0. It has been since 2022 that Herb Sendek's Santa Clara team has beaten Randy Bennett's St. Mary's. And Santa Clara has been really good. Like, they've had some NBA level players on all of those teams.
Yeah.
And they haven't done it. And yet, I think they're going to do it here. The reason why is St. Mary's is a different St. Mary's team than you come to expect. They don't have a point guard. That seems a little bit, but you think about all the great steady point guards that have come through Moraga over the years. Their point guard is Joshua Dent, who's a sophomore, who didn't play as a freshman. He's talented. He's one of the best free throw shooters in the country. He's also not very athletic. He turns it over too much. And he struggled immensely in that Vanderbilt game. 2 assists, 3 turnovers, only 8 points in 32 minutes. Santa Clara is the best pressure team that St. Mary's has faced outside of Vanderbilt this season, and they're going to come after the lack of ball handler on St. Mary's at home. Just 2 weeks ago, Santa Clara was up at the half at Gonzaga. They couldn't hold on, but that's the upper level talent of this team. At home in a big spot against a very good, but I would say more flawed than usual St. Mary's team. I think this is a great spot for Santa Clara to really assert themselves in this WCC race.
Do you know how many wins St. Mary's has against a KenPom top 100 team this year?
I have it pulled up, so the answer is 1.
1.
Yeah.
1. Now, they have not played a lot of these games. They played 3 of them. One of them was against Vanderbilt, and as we mentioned, I'm not going to knock you for losing to Vanderbilt, even though they did lose by 25. And against Boise. And Boise's a solid enough team. It's a 1-point loss. I'm not going to necessarily chalk that up against you either. But kind of going off of the point of last game, in terms of contextualizing how good the St. Mary's team is, this game's going to matter a lot from that aspect because all of their metrics and analytical stuff looks great. But there is a big difference between the 30th on KenPom right now. There is a big difference between being the 30th best team in the country and being ranked 30th somewhere because you're really good at beating up on teams you are better than. Mm-hmm. Right. And St. Mary's has had a little bit of both throughout Randy Bennett's tenure. They've had some teams that are legitimately awesome. And they've had some teams that have been overinflated because of the way they beat up on lesser teams that they play where they truly can do that. The Santa Clara team is going to make them work for a win, particularly with Santa Clara hosting this game. Right. If St. Mary's goes on the road, wins this game, I think we look at the St. Mary's team as being the second best team in the Mountain West, or the West Coast Conference, no matter what. NCAA tournament team, like we're looking at them from that perspective. A loss isn't necessarily going to change the perception of them from that standpoint, but I think it lessens the margin for error because there aren't going to be a lot of opportunities for them to make up the ground from what they didn't have in non-conference play. Santa Clara mentioned some of the inconsistency. They had the Loyola Chicago loss. They do have wins over Xavier, have wins over Nevada, have a win over Big Nice, who's 67 on KenPom. And you mentioned how well they played at Gonzaga. They need a win like this to, I think, truly elevate them this season. I think they can go out and get it too. Like the pressure you pointed out, the rebounding, particularly the offensive glass, could potentially throw a wrench to something St. Mary's typically does well. Going to be a fun game to watch for sure in this one.
We could have been on 3-bid WCC watch if Santa Clara did not lose to Loyola Chicago, but they did. And so now we're not. It would have been fun.
Now we're not. They just need them to win the conference tournament, right? Just beat Gonzaga in Vegas. That's all you got to do.
And to win the tournament, they'll have to beat Gonzaga and St. Mary's. It's not going to happen.
That's all you got to do. It's fine. All you got to do. let's get to
this will be done soon. More WCC very short.
Let's get to picking these games. I'll start here because it sounds like we're both picking Santa Clara at home. Yeah. Okay. I'm with you there. Let's go back to the top then. Florida at Vanderbilt.
Florida rebounding matters.
I'm going Florida as well. Rebounding matters. I think we get a good Boogie Flam performance as well. BYU and Texas Tech.
I'm going BYU, and you might have to go Texas Tech, or we're all picking chalk.
I am going Texas Tech. The reason why I'm going Texas Tech, I think them being at home will matter in a game where I do think BYU's slow starts come back to bite them. I think it is a very similar script to that UConn game where Texas Tech gets a lead. AJ DeBonsa leads just an insane comeback with him doing insane things. Texas Tech makes enough plays at the end to win that game. So I'm going Texas Tech there. New Mexico and San Diego State.
Love New Mexico, but this is a perfect spot for San Diego State to show that they are who we thought they were at the start of the season.
New Mexico gets the road win.
No way. No way.
Do not trust San Diego State offensively. Okay. And I do not think they are as good as they have been defensively in past years. So we got two different there.
You are only one game behind me now, and I was up by as much as like 6 at some point. So maybe you do know what you're talking about.
This is a hot streak. We'll see if we can come back. Maybe take the lead next time we do this on Monday. Or maybe this is the point where tides turn. We shall see. It'll be fun to watch these games and everything else this weekend, mostly Saturday. But everything else this weekend, we'll be back on Monday to break those games down and preview the week ahead. Matthew Winick, I am Brian Rauf, and we'll talk to you then.